All right, let's dive right into a really confusing corner of the US tax world. Child credits for families who use an ITI. Now, this system has some very specific hidden rules, and getting your head around them is absolutely crucial. So let's start with the big puzzle. You're doing everything right. You pay your taxes, you have a child who depends on you, so why in the world would you be blocked from getting the main child tax credit? It just doesn't seem to make sense, right? Well, this is the reality for a lot of people filing with an ITIN, and we're about to show you exactly why. The answer to that puzzle, it really all starts with the basic difference between two 9-digit numbers. You've got the individual taxpayer identification number, the ITIN, and the Social Security number, or SSN. They might look kind of similar on paper, but in the eyes of the tax code, they are worlds apart. And here it is, the key difference. A Social Security number unlocks things like work authorization and federal benefits. But an ITIN, which comes from the IRS, not the Social Security Administration, has one single job: to let people file and pay their federal taxes. And this isn't just some little bureaucratic detail. It's the reason for all the credit rules we're about to get into. So, let's be perfectly clear about what an ITIN is not. It does not let you work legally in the US, it doesn't change your immigration status, and for our purposes, this is huge, it doesn't make you eligible for Social Security benefits or the Earned Income Tax Credit. The IRS is crystal clear on this. An ITIN is for tax reporting, period. Okay, so with that foundation laid, we can get to the main event. We're going to tackle the one specific rule that causes so much confusion and stops so many ITIN filers from claiming that full child tax credit. And here it is. This is the single most important, non-obvious detail you have to understand. When it comes to the main child tax credit, the IRS isn't looking at the parent's number. It doesn't matter if you, the person filing, have an ITIN or an SSN. What matters, the only thing that matters, is the number that belongs to your child. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is a direct quote from the IRS website. It's completely unambiguous. If a child has an ITIN, you cannot claim the child tax credit for them. That child must have a Social Security number to qualify. So the bottom line is this simple. Your kid has an SSN? Yes, you can claim the child tax credit, even if you as the parent are using an ITIN. But if the child has an ITIN, the answer is no. And pay attention to those dates there, 2018 to 2025. We're gonna circle back to why that's so important later. Okay, so that main door might seem closed, but that doesn't mean you're completely out of options. The tax code actually has a different route, an alternative path for families in this exact spot. So the natural question is, okay, great, the main credit is out. Am I just out of luck? And the good news is, no, not necessarily. Just because the main child tax credit is off the table, doesn't mean there's nothing at all for that dependent. And this alternative path is called the Credit for Other Dependents, or ODC. You can think of it as the credit that was literally designed for this situation, for dependents who don't meet those strict rules for the child tax credit, which, as we now know, includes any child with an ITIN instead of an SSN. Now, this credit is worth $500 for each qualifying dependent. It's really important to note that it is a non-refundable credit. So what does that mean? Well, it can wipe out your tax bill, bringing it all the way down to zero. But if the credit is worth more than the tax you owe, you don't get that extra money back as a refund. Still, knocking $500 off your tax bill is a pretty big deal. All right, so you know about the ODC. Sounds straightforward enough, right? Well, this is where things get really tricky. There's a procedural trap, a kind of catch-22 in the ITIN application process itself that trips up a ton of people. See, when you're getting an ITIN for your child, you can't just send in the application, that Form W-7, all by itself. No. You have to physically attach it to a valid federal tax return. But that's not all. That tax return has to claim what the IRS calls an allowable tax benefit for that child. And that last step, that's where the trap is. And here's the catch. pulled right from the IRS's own instructions. Just writing your kid's name down as a dependent on your tax return, that's not good enough. It doesn't count. To justify getting the ITIN, you have to actively claim a tax benefit, which means you must check the box for the credit for other dependents for that child. So this is probably the most critical piece of practical advice in this whole thing. When you're using tax software to apply for your kid's ITIN, that software probably won't check the ODC box for you automatically. Why? Because there's no tax ID number in the box yet. You have to go in and manually check it. If you forget, the IRS is very likely to just reject the ITIN application flat out, because as far as they're concerned, you didn't claim a real benefit. Okay, last thing. Let's zoom out for a second, because you really need to understand that this strict Social Security number rule for the child tax credit, it's not set in stone. It's actually a temporary policy, and it has an expiration date that's coming up fast. So how did we even get here? Well, before 2018, the rules were more lenient. This current really strict rule was created by the big tax law in 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But here's the kicker. That rule is set to expire at the end of 2025. And if Congress doesn't do anything, the law will automatically snap back to the way it was before. And that leaves us with this huge question hanging over everything. As we get closer to the end of 2025, what's going to happen? Is Congress going to step in and extend the current rule or maybe change it somehow? Or are they just going to let it expire, which would automatically mean that the child tax credit suddenly becomes available again for children with ITINs? It's a massive policy cliff, and the outcome is going to affect millions of families one way or the other.